things were moving around, so that's why I couldn't upload last week's recording. So this week we have problem set from week 8. Let's start now. Do you want to have time to discuss, or should we just go ahead? What do you prefer? Go ahead and you'll answer. We'll pick as usual. As usual, we want to feel confident in our abilities to answer the questions. I tend to hear I'm not sure answers, but in fact the test results show that you are sure actually. You just don't want to speak, many of you. Right, so let's start with the first one then. Oh, what happened? It's technology, isn't it, that happens every now and then. So firms face, to which of the four categories? Now above is missing, yeah? Above is basically the 4 categories of market structures. Yeah, that's missing. For some reason I failed to include that. Apply to the member firms, yeah? So the categories include, which ones? First one? First category for market structure? Perfect competition? Monopoly? Oligopoly? Exactly, monopolistic competition. Now, there are characteristics. These are characteristics of these categories, different categories of market structure. So, first one, firms face a downward sloping demand curve in which market structures? In which ones, guys? Monopoly, yes. It can be more than one category, yeah. This can include more than one category.
Oligopoly.
Oligopoly, yes.
Monopolistic competition.
Exactly, monopolistic competition. Why not perfect competition?
Because it's the price takers has to be the same price.
Exactly. Does everyone know why this doesn't apply to all the market structures, all the categories here? This downward sloping curve doesn't apply to all. Who doesn't know? Let's hear that. Who doesn't know that perfect competition or firms in perfect competition face a horizontal demand curve? So everyone is happy with that? In the industry, let's do a quick recap. In a market, you have a demand and supply determining the price at which goods are sold. That's the price. That's equilibrium price. For a firm in a perfectly competitive market, price is determined by the market, so they sell at that price. Anything they can, so that's their demand. Any amount. At any point, the price remains the same, right? For of the 4 categories, for the other categories, 3 categories, the demand curve is downward sloping, which means they are, what do you call them when the demand curve is downward sloping? When the demand curve is like this for the firm, this is the firm one, yeah? So this is the firm one, this is also firm, and the market as well. They will down sloping. But for the firm, this is downward sloping curve for firms in monopolistic competition, as you said, monopoly and oligopoly. They face this. Why? Because they are price makers. Here firms are price takers, here firms are price makers. They set the prices as they wish. And if they set the price too high, too little will be sold. If they set the price too low, too much will be sold. But the price is lower, low prices mean lower profits, yeah? So they don't usually lower the prices that much. Makes sense? Everyone, that the reason why they have downward sloping curve? Where did I, is it here? Alright, so B now. New firms can freely enter the industry in which of the 4 categories?
Perfect competition.
Perfect competition?
Yeah.
And? Exactly. Also in monopolistic competition. Remember the slides? The first slide I think we started last week showed you, and the previous week also showed you which categories. You can set up a restaurant easily You just need £2,000 for the first month probably. It will come with everything. It will come. Cookers will be there. It's just you need to hire someone to do the job of cooking and then start. And you can set your flavors and then dominate the market in providing this sort of flavored products. Let's say meals. Yeah. You monopolize that sort of. But you also compete with others who are producing similar goods. Yeah. That's why you're competing with the monopoly characteristics. That's why it's a monopolistic competition. Since setup costs are cheap, low, it's called free entry to the market. Perfect competition is naturally perfect competition. It's perfect. It's a fairy tale world. You can set up a firm there and exit anytime, right? So the answer to the second one is new firms can fully enter the industry in perfect competition and monopolistic competition. That's the answer. 3 now. Number 3. Which ones? Homogeneous means?
Same.
The same, yes. Very, very similar in other words, yeah. If not identical, it's the same. I mean, it's very similar.
Perfect competition.
Perfect competition, exactly. And monopolistic competition, not necessarily. They sell similar goods, yeah. Similar goods, but not the same though. Similar goods. Remember, similar goods are not identical goods usually. That's because we can product differentiate them. We can differentiate them. Oligopoly, exactly. Yes, we can. There are some oligopoly companies that basically sell identical products. Some, not all. Large farmers in some towns, they oligopoly. You know, the chicken. They don't have labels to differentiate. They don't say this my chicken tastes better than the others. Yeah, they cannot say that. So it's identical in a way. The melons, for example, watermelon. In Britain, it's very hard to get a delicious one. So it's exactly the same. Less delicious ones. Okay, D now. Firms are price takers in which of the categories?
Perfect competition.
Only in perfect competition. Yeah, that's why they face horizontal demand curve. Perfect. And remember, perfect competition is a fairy tale competition. Yeah, it is perfect, but in reality, nothing is perfect. Firms face an elastic demand, but less than infinity at the profit maximizing output.
Monopolistic competition.
Yes, more than one. Is more than one. Any firm that faces downward sloping demand curve will have elastic demand at that point. Oligopoly as well, yes, and monopoly. All three. Remember the first question, downward sloping curve. These three firms will face elastic demand for their products. Will have elastic demand for their products. Now, firms will produce where MR equals MC if they wish to maximize profits. Remember the thing I told you last week? For this rule, where does it apply? Which categories? All of them, yeah, exactly. I told you all of them. This is the only thing that applies to all the firms in all categories. See, you guys just need to sit and think a little bit. You remember them. And this will be in the exam usually. We have multiple choice questions, 10 of them in the final exam as well. Remember? They are a little difficult though than the ones you did for the midterm. Because you need to now remember everything. Yeah, in the final. Right, there is perfect knowledge on the part of consumers of price and product quality. In which of the categories? You see, it says perfect knowledge. Perfect competition only. And that is a fairy tale one, yeah? Perfect knowledge. You know, in other words, the customers know the ingredients of everything that goes into their production. They know the costs, and sellers also know what customers want perfectly. And everything is perfect in a fairy tale. Right. Happy ending, isn't it, in fairy tales? So G is done, perfect competition, only nothing else, yeah? Question number 2 now. You want a quick discussion or a time to think before we start? A little? Or if you want, we can start right away. Yeah. What do you think? Should we start? Yeah? Or you need thinking time? Time to think. No, you don't need. You don't need. Everyone is happy. Okay, let's start then. In which of the four categories would you place each of the following? It is possible in some cases that part of the industry could be in one category and part in another. If so, name both. Right, possible, yeah, part of it. You can argue for it. If you can justify it, it's economics, so we can accept it. Right, so a village post office is. Does anyone live in village here?
Village, I guess, I live
in the village. I live in the park. Back home, yeah.
Huh?
I live in a village back home.
Back home. How about post office? Going to post office. How many do you have?
I don't think it exists.
No.
No.
I don't think it exists. That's a very interesting answer. Okay. In Britain, however, you can have at most one. Because other than one post office, what else? I mean, you can do online orders probably these days, but post office doesn't make much profit if there are two of them in a small village, let's say, yeah? It could be oligopoly, but village has to be very large for that. There must be a large market for the firm to set up actually a firm, a branch of a post office, right? In fact, post office was the monopoly in this country until 80s, I think. It was the only company provided deliveries. Only now they're broken up. And there's competition from French and German providers, delivery companies. DHL, UPS, and Yodel, a couple of others, right? So it's a village, small village, usually, even if it's a large, there will be one post office because there's not much market and not everyone is sending a package or parcel or letters every day. So monopoly for the most part. B. Restaurants in a large town. It's a large town, remember?
Perfect competition. Monopolistic competition.
Monopolistic, exactly. Monopolistic competition. Restaurants are usually in monopolistic competition because perfect competition means identical meals. But we have tastes, differences in our tastes, and also flavor differences, side plates being different. So, you know, if you visit this Turkish restaurants somewhere in North London, does anyone live in North London? There are plenty of Turkish restaurants there. Their taste, they taste different. Their products, maybe doner kebab looks authentic, but when you eat in one of them, if you like it, you keep going there. Yeah, they monopolize your demand there. Yeah, they monopolize in that sort of flavor or whatever you call it. Barbers, you may have four of them, but you tend to go to one of them because you like their way of cutting, their styles. Yeah, there's something that attracts you to them. So they are providing, in a way, very, very similar products, services, but then they're differentiating in a way. In some aspects they are different. Yeah, you always go to one barber. I'm sure you do that, especially boys. The girls probably as well, I guess. Banks. How about banks?
Monopolistic competition.
Monopolistic competition. How many banks do you have there? Too many. It has to be too many for a monopolistic competition, though.
Yeah,
A lot.
I thought monopolistic competition is many.
Yeah, but we have very, very large ones dominating the British market, especially British. Oligopoly, isn't it? Let's name them: Barclays, HSBC, NatWest, Lloyds, Santander, M25.
Yeah, that's a bank.
Oh.
So, other than these, the other names are very small names. Nationwide, M25, maybe Metro is just making a name now, but these are very small. They are not oligopoly at all. They are just entering, just growing. Yeah, it's like grocery supermarkets. The supermarkets, they have 5 big ones and then very small corner shops and things like this. This is the same banking thing. Banking also is in oligopoly. Yeah, oligopoly. Laptop and tablet manufacturers. How many brands can you name?
HP, Dell.
Yeah, a couple, and more probably, a little bit more. But then, what does it make them? Which category do they fit then? Not many, right? Oligopoly as a result. They dominate. So 4 or 5 brands dominate the whole market, right? You don't see others competing against them. If anything, they are just selling online on eBay or on Amazon some random names from China, right? Chinese brands, yeah. So, but they are not dominant. The 4 or 5 brands are dominant. Producers of barley. Do you drink malt, super malt? It's made of barley. Barley is a grain and also is an input into bread, and usually sold in the world commodity market, and we are not as individuals able to affect the price of barley, and there is no packaging for them, no product differentiation. So close to perfect competition because we are not able to affect the prices set by the market. We buy at the going market price as barley buyers. But usually when we say we, I am thinking of bread manufacturers, bread producers, malt makers, or beer producers as well. They also use input, I think barley as input here. It's a grain, type of grain. Now, F, water supply. Yeah, you can say it's monopoly in many countries. There's only one water supply company, but there are many distributors of the water, right? So one. So in many cases, it's a monopoly. It's rarely oligopoly because water supply is highly capital-intensive industry, and it's usually natural monopoly. It's natural to have a monopoly instead of an oligopoly or something else. It's cheaper to have one single manufacturer or the supplier of water. You can have distributors like Thames Water, you can have EDF distributing the water and things like that. Yeah? Local buses. Local buses. If you're living in a village, probably this is a more applicable case. Because 1 or 2 of bus services, yeah, they monopolize the route, or there's an oligopoly. There's two maximum local buses in your area. You don't see many bus numbers driving past your local area, right? Delivering or providing the transport services, I should say. So it's oligopoly or sometimes monopoly. H, the market for foreign currency. Again, it's similar to barley case because foreign currency is priced based on a world price, world foreign exchange market, I should say. So if you go on a holiday to Turkey and you want to exchange your pounds to Turkish lira, the Turkish bank will quote you a price based on the market price that's prevailing. They don't actually come up with a new price for you. They look at the exchange rate and then they say, okay, we'll add our profit and then that's the price. But then this Turkish guy cannot affect the market price of Turkish lira. So Turkish lira is a commodity. It's sold in the world market, and we individuals are too small to affect the prices. So we are competing against too many consumers, or the providers are also competing against too many providers. Which of the following are characteristics of oligopoly? A. There are just a few firms that dominate the industry. Is this a characteristic?
Yeah.
Yes. Few firms usually. Yeah. They dominate the whole industry. Exactly. B. Is it yes or no? There are few, if any, barriers to entry of new firms into the industry.
No, there are barriers.
No barriers. Oligopoly. The reason they dominate is because there must be an entry barrier. Otherwise, anyone can set up a business like a monopolistic competition or perfect competition, right? So the highest barrier to entry is usually in monopoly, but oligopoly also maintains high barriers so that they can maintain, these 5 firms, let's say, maintain economies of scale they have and not share it with anyone, not share the market shares with anyone. Can you give an example of barriers to entry, let's say? There must be many, but you can name a few if you can. Yeah, go ahead. Barriers to entry into into a market. Hmm? Small firms.
Smartphones.
Oh, smartphones. No, barrier to entry into the market. Let's say is it easy to enter the smartphone market? No. Already oligopoly, isn't it? Samsung, Apple, HTC. What else is there? Probably one more.
Huawei.
Now these are the small ones, isn't it? The big ones are Samsung and Apple. They are duopoly.
Google.
Some others, but can you enter the market easily? Can you enter that market? No, there's a barrier because you need a huge investment to be able to compete with them. So that's already a barrier. And to produce that quality, you need a huge R&D investment. So that is a barrier. But can you enter the restaurant business on this Mile End Road easily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just go and then rent the room, the space for 500 a month, and then share the profit with the guy who rents you out the space, and you can easily do that. There's no barrier to entry, right? But when it comes to oligopoly, usually oligopoly is very, very big companies, and it's not easy to penetrate the market. Are you able to create a Tesco in the next month? A new Tesco type business? Large? No. Huge entry barriers again. Economies of scale. You need to have that scale in order to price lower so that you can compete with Tesco. That's why corner shops are not able to grow very fast, given that the scale economies to achieve is high. Right? So, barriers to entry, there are plenty of them actually, not few. Plenty barriers to entry. That's why existing firms become large and they dominate for a long time before they break up. For a long time. C. Remember I gave you in the lecture an example of Nokia and Motorola disappearing. 1985, Motorola was the dominant mobile phone provider in the USA. 2000s, Motorola was dead. Nokia dominated. Now 2010 onwards, Nokia disappeared. Apple and Samsung is dominated. Apple and Samsung dominate. Who knows? A Chinese firm will dominate the rest at some point. Because for the same quality, the same chipset quality and specs, you can get a Chinese phone for a fraction of the price. I was surprised actually to see this. You know, the Xiaomi Redmi phones, 4 gig RAM, 128 gig space with a large screen, very quality screen, and a 2-day battery life for 130 pounds. The same specs, iPhone 11, 1,000 pounds. So that they are trying to, you see, this is how they penetrate the market, these Xiaomis. Huawei, the way the company, the Chinese Huawei, is penetrating already. They were a very small company in the 2008, and there was no mobile phone. Today, Huawei's mobile phones are even dominating the rental business. You know, if you go to a car from warehouse, they rent you out the phone at a price. So there was no Huawei at the time. Only Motorola, iPhone, not even an iPhone. Sony Ericsson, some other weird name that doesn't exist anymore. So oligopoly is a type of market where if there is no barrier to entry maintained, it disappears usually. It becomes contestable market, yeah? Right, there are plenty of, that's why oligopolies are maintained. C. The firms face downward sloping demand curves in oligopoly. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's one of the 3 firms that face downward sloping curve. D. There is little point in advertising because there are so few firms. Does that make sense? They need to advertise to keep the market position. They dominate. Keeping the existing market share requires constant advertising. If they don't advertise, you should be really suspicious because they probably are colluding now with each other. They're cartelizing the market. Then they don't need any advertising. But when they advertise, they are actually competing for market share, existing market share, so to squeeze out some existing ones. E now. Oligopolies tend to take into account the actions and reactions of other firms. Yes or no? Yes. When you have small number of firms, we usually tend to monitor each other's actions. When you have large number of firms, it doesn't make sense because no one is able to affect the market usually. So don't monitor everyone. But when some is among the few firms, one of or two of them are dominating, you simply take reaction or you react to it, and then come up with some strategy to win the market share, right? So that's E, yes. Question number 4 now. Assume that there are 6 firms in a country's carpet manufacturing industry and that they collude to restrict output. So they're working together in some way, tacitly or openly and explicitly, thereby maintaining a high price. So restricting output means you produce less than minimum required, and as a result, prices are higher. Yeah. Now, under which of the following circumstances is collusion likely to break down? Notice this is likely, yeah? Not definitely, likely. It's likely that it may not, but it's likely here that breaks down, the collusion breaks down. So A, the government imposes higher duties on imported carpets.
A.
What did you say, sorry?
Yeah, I think so.
It breaks down.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the thing about tariffs. When they impose duty on imported carpets, that means a tax on imported carpets. So the imported carpets become more expensive. And these manufacturers actually produce internally.
Oh, yeah.
So that means you thought probably importing car, yeah? Importing,
Yeah, I thought they were importing.
No, they are manufacturing. It says they're manufacturing industry, yeah? So it's they are manufacturing internally means since it's hard to import from outside, they sell at high prices internally because the government is imposing or restricting the imported carpets. It's like UK government is telling us you can only buy UK-made cars after Brexit. Then Vauxhall can put any high price at once because we cannot get anything from outside at a cheap price. Yeah, so we'll have to buy the Vauxhall cars or Land Rovers or maybe Bentleys as well if we earn enough. I'm sure there will be a lot of bankers here sitting, driving Bentleys and Teslas in about 5 years' time, if not earlier than that. Huh?
5 years? I'll be homeless.
You'll be homeless. Don't wish for that. Why you predict yourself to be homeless? I thought you were going to Qatar or Kuwait.
Oh yeah.
You said,
Qatar, bro. Yeah, I'm gonna be homeless in Qatar.
you know, in Qatar, you don't pay tax. You don't pay tax. In Abu Dhabi, you don't pay tax, I think.
Well, I'm not having any money to
So these Arab countries usually don't have tax. So you earn 40,000, that's all your money. No tax, nothing. So if you're lucky to get a job there, you should stay there. And buy the house here and stay there. That's what a lot of people are doing right now. Right, guys, let's move on. We'll talk about Dubai later. The several new chains of discount carpet retailers enter the market. Will the collusion break down afterwards? Think about Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and what happened after Aldi and others came in. Discount stores came in. No one expected it, but although they didn't collude, I don't think the supermarkets colluded, but they are actually having to reduce the prices because of these discount retailers. It is likely that when there is a discounter entering the market, the existing big firms scramble for market share because their customers will leave them for these new entrants like Aldi and Lidl. Yeah, they are discount retailers and they are winning the market. So collusion fails as a result. They don't listen to each other when there is a collusion, such case. Collusion only works when there is a stable market with proper entry barriers. Guys, see now. One of the firms develops a new cost-saving technology of producing a technique for producing a carpet, guys. Producing carpets.
Yeah.
It breaks down, right? Because you now have a cheaper manufacturing option. Why not then sell at a slightly lower price and then attract more customers? Yeah. Why would you share your costing with others or technology with others? Because collusion is when you share with everyone else, but then you spend so much to produce this, to come up with this technology, and you don't want to give it away, like Tesla did, Dyson did. You know, Hoover market is oligopoly. You have number of brands just a few brands before the Chinese came in. Dyson was the luxury one. It never shared its know-how, its technology with anyone. It can produce at low cost but a very high quality product, and they still price at a high price. Yeah, because of having a good technology, they tend to, you know, deviate from collusion. They tend to be alone. They tend to be dominating on their own. Yeah, they don't collude with anyone. But there are others who probably are coordinating the market, looking at others' reaction to price at a comparable levels. Now D, 3 of the smaller manufacturers merge. Will that lead to collusion's breakdown? No, it actually strengthens it, because dominant firm now makes sure that no one actually leaves the collusion or sticks to the collusion, basically. Yeah? No, everyone sticks to the collusion. Collusive behavior, I should say. Like Saudis. Saudis are keeping the OPEC collusion possible these days because they are the one dominating largest oil producer in the world. One of the firms becomes dominant in this industry. The same again. It makes sure that everyone follows it. Because usually dominant firms don't want to be alone, don't want to be attacked. So they make sure that they set the standards and everyone follows it. 3, 4 others does it, usually. So dominant firm strategy works here. So it doesn't break down this dominant firm doesn't break down the collusion. Now the F, demand for carpets fall. What happens to the collusion behavior? Colluding firms, will they carry on colluding if the demand falls, or will they start reducing their prices so that demand they capture the falling demand? Reduce the price, so that means breakdown of the collusion. As I said, collusion works only when there's a stable market, when the demand is stable, supply is stable, costs are stable, nothing much changing, and barriers are in place. G, legislation is passed preventing the exchange of information between the colluding firms. What do you think? Then it means it's illegal to collude. Yeah? Collusion is when you exchange information between yourselves. Tesco goes to Sainsbury's and says, let's keep the little and Aldi guys away. Why not to price in a way that helps us to maintain our dominance? Why not exchange our know-how, or the way technology that keeps our costs lower, right? So that's a collusion behavior. And when that happens, in this country it's illegal. When that happens, for a long time, these dominant firms become a cartel as well. They may be a monopoly in a way, as a single firm made up of 5 smaller firms, right? Yeah, that. However, because that's made illegal, that behavior is made illegal, we will have a breakdown of the collusion. Yeah, collusion is prevented now from happening. Now, question 5. Do you have any question on the previous parts? If not, let's read this one. So I'll read this myself because the appears to be screen is too small for displaying everything. Right, the first question. Question A. This following diagram illustrates a firm under monopolistic competition. Let's label the curves. What's the first curve? What's the name of the first curve? That's marginal cost, exactly. Yeah, it's a J-shaped curve usually. In our book, Mankiw, it's a straight line, but they cut off the J part, the part that turns. They cut it off for some reason to keep it simple, but it's a J-shaped curve. Now, how about number 2? Anyone else? I want to hear from everyone, please. Huh? Average cost, yeah? It's U-shaped. It's average cost. And the third one? Anyone else, please?
Demand.
Yes, it's average revenue or demand. And anyone else? Let's hear from you. You don't know, you're not sure. Supply is actually upward sloping, remember? So this is, maybe you help us, please. Anyone from that group? What is this curve? What is this curve called? Average revenue, and below it is, anyone from the other side? Exactly, it's margin revenue. Well done. You know, you see, you should spit it out. You should just say it. In the quiz, you will see something like this. The first answer is the right answer usually. If you're not sure, you probably know it. You heard it, but you may not be able to remember it. Not confident as well enough. Yeah, somebody put it on the survey last week or last time. I'm still not confident about economics, and some did very, very sharp comments and wrote some sharp comments as well. Right. So moving on now. So we label these curves now. Question, guys: Does the diagram represent the short run or long run position in this firm?
Short run.
It's short run, exactly. It is a short run. The reason is very simple here, isn't it? There are two things that you can see why it's short run. First, the profit maximizing output at this point, and this quantity, profit maximizing quantity, is sold at P4, so produced at P4 cost. This is where the average cost is, and sold at P6. So the costs are below the price. When the costs are below the price, that is a short run, because we are now making profit. This is the profit area shaded. Price minus average cost gives us profit. In the long run, the U-shaped average cost curve would be tangential to the average revenue curve. Usually, keep that in mind, guys. But this is short run position. Next question: Is P3 the long run equilibrium price? Explain, guys. Is P3 the long run equilibrium price? Is P3 the long run equilibrium price? So here's the P3. Look at the P3. It's referring to this quantity, this point here, and with this. That's the P3. Is it a long run price? I just mentioned earlier that long run would happen when the average revenue curve is tangential rather than crossing to the AC curve. Shh. Guys, what do you think? No, it's not. I will draw the long run in a minute. There is a long run curve. There is a section there, question there about it. So it's a short run still. Since you said short run, that must be the short run then. What are the profit maximizing output and price here? Can you name them, please? Profit maximizing price and output. I have already labeled them for you. You just need to spot them.
P6.
P6 is the profit maximizing price,
Yeah.
and quantities.
Q2.
Yes, it's Q2. Yeah, that's it. If you trace this to the demand curve, it leads to the P6 as the price profit maximizing. Why is it profit maximizing price and quantity? Why would you decide that it is? Why did you say it is?
Because
The rule?
you get the most profit out of selling that.
Yes, there was this rule that applied to all the firms. You told me about that, right? You answered that question. What was it? Yes, it's the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. This is the point here, where MR equals MC. Yeah, this is where they cross. This MC curve is crossing with the MR curve. corresponding points are Q2 and P6. Yeah, keep that in mind.
Sorry, you were saying earlier in part C that the reason why P3 is not the long run equivalent price because demand should be a tangent, is it?
Yeah, demand should be tangential to the AC curve. Rather, here it's called crossing it, yeah? So it cannot be. It should be tangential. It should just kiss the side of it or bottom of it. One way or the other, it's tangential rather than crossing it. Now, on the diagram, everyone please, on the diagram, shade in the amount of profit made at the maximum profit output. Now, I have done that for you. That shaded area. That's the maximum profit and that can be earned at the given output and price combination. Now, draw new average and marginal revenue curves on the diagram to illustrate the long-run equilibrium that will occur after entry of new firms into the industry. Remember, this is monopolistic competition, and entry is free, and exit is free too. So you don't have to resell everything that you bought. You just stop paying the rent, you exit. Unlike oligopoly case, where once you set up, it's hard to exit without selling your capital goods and equipment at a discounted price. So that's a big loss as well, yeah? So it's very hard to leave oligopolistic market as well. So we need to draw the long run curve. This is a short run combination. Now we're gonna draw the long run. Long run looks like this now. In the long run, and I had the graph in the slides as well, it would have been a very, very ideal situation if you actually did problem set before you turn up here. That you would understand very well by looking at the graph, because everything in the problem sets is basically complementary to what we cover in the lectures, as I mentioned today in the lectures. Yeah, we have nothing new from that comes out of the chapters or anything. So everything in here is basically additional to the problems lectures. So in the long run, our AC is going to stay the same, but because new firms enter, so originally this was the average revenue curve, demand curve. This is the short run. Oops, this is the short run. But because new firms enter the market, what happens? We have to now share the market with the rest of the new firms, yeah, the entering new firms and with the rest of the industry. So that means this shifts to the left. The demand shift to the left. There's a reduction in the demand, so that's our average revenue long run. And this is where we kind of tangential. We are tangential to this curve. And at this price, we sell quantity Q and P here. And at this point, what we have is that the price equals average cost. We are just selling at the price that makes us just normal profits, no supernormal profits, just normal, yeah? That's the long run. In the short run, it was like this. I'm gonna switch back because it's hard to draw this one. This is the one where average revenue crosses somewhere close to the bottom of the AC curve. However, this AC curve moves to the left, and we will end up having something like this. Yeah, marginal cost will be, marginal revenue curve is then something like this. Something like this. It's slightly lower, yeah, but this is marginal revenue, and marginal cost will still be there, like this. Yeah. Now, what is the relationship between the AC, MC, AR, and MR curves at this long run equilibrium position explained? So, looking at this, what can you comment on that? On this result? We still have a U-shaped AC curve. The rule again in the long run stays the same. The point where the profits are maximized or losses are minimized is the same point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Yeah, it's this point here. It's the same point. This Q is referring to this point. Yeah, corresponds to this point here. And AR in the long run is tangential to the AC curve. It doesn't cross it. It kisses the side of it. It's the right side. If you put yourself in this AC as an AC curve, from your perspective, it becomes this point here. That's the relationship between them. And we still have the rule staying here. MR equals MC. And MC still cutting through the bottom of AC. That still keeps going, yeah? The only thing changed was this demand curve from the short run moved to the left because of dilution of market share. With diluted means we just have a smaller market share now. Our demand is smaller than before. The reason is new firms entered and we were making profit, not anymore. We just make now normal profits. We were making economic profits before. All right. Anything that I wanted to add? One second, please. No, not much. Nothing. All right. See you in next week's lecture, and you're welcome to attend my office hours again if the lecture was too fast or too quick today. So don't feel like, yeah, go ahead.
Are you shy next